Mm. Well, good morning, everyone. It's a genuine pleasure to be here today. As Christian said, my name is Dr. Kylie Bragdon. And to be quite frank with you, the most important thing that anyone can really know about me is that I believe that kindness can change the world. However, I recognize that it must begin with our leaders. So I'm on a mission to teach people transformational leadership practices so they may profoundly improve their businesses, organizations, and communities with greater efficiency and compassion. Now, today I hope to show you the value of transformational leadership practices by using a small business model that I know better than any other. And that just so happens to be commercial lobstering. So I'm very lucky to say that I'm from the small town of Winter Harbor, Maine. I come from generations of lobster fishermen and myself have about 15 years of lobstering experience. I started lobstering when I was about 12 years old, and today I hope to use my stories from sea to motivate and inspire you to adopt a few practices that will help your businesses run more efficiently and more effectively. But before we get too far into any of all of that, I always like to begin these conversations by letting people know exactly what they can expect from me. So let's talk about that for a moment. So at the end of the session, I'm going to make sure that you understand the urgency around more efficient and compassionate leadership practices. From there, I'm going to show you the four different facets of transformational leadership and make sure that you have a minimum of four practical strategies that will help improve organizational productivity that you can begin utilizing immediately. So, actionable items at the end of this session. And to make things a little bit fun, I'm also going to make sure that you understand how to prepare a lobster for market. And this is a trick that's sure to awe and impress all of your friends and family at the next big gathering. Trust me, they're going to love it. It's a little oddity that you'll be able to throw in. So if that sounds okay to all of you guys, let's jump in, shall we? And start with our why, or as I like to call it, our sense of urgency. So I think that we can all agree that the pandemic really dramatically impacted the way that we do work. Unfortunately, during that time, many people left their jobs, they left their careers, they left industries entirely. As a result, we're currently looking at a situation where we simply don't have enough people to do the jobs that are available. It's currently predicted that by the year 2030, there's going to be approximately an 85 million skilled worker shortage globally. Now, you might be looking at that and thinking, okay, that's not such a big deal. It's a global number. Well, to make it more real, as it stood on January 1st of 2024, in New Jersey alone, there were 221,000 jobs available. This is a really real issue for all of us. Now, hypothetically, you may be one of the small businesses that avoided this worker crisis. If so, that doesn't mean the sense of urgency escapes you, as it also turns out that within the next 4 years, 44% of all employees are expected to need a significant skills upgrade. This is largely brought on due to the changes in technology, use of AI, and changes in policy. So, what we're all inevitably facing is a circumstance where we simply don't have enough people with the right skills to do the jobs that are available. The unfortunate side of this is for small businesses, they have in fact been the largest creator of jobs over the last 5 year period, creating approximately 71% of all new jobs. The unfortunate side of it is that oftentimes small businesses cannot compete with the benefits or salary lines that larger businesses can offer employees or potential employees. Therefore, the challenges of this worker crisis is most hardly felt by these small businesses. So it's a stressor more so for you guys than anyone else. So what can we expect of not having enough workers? Well, we can expect that the responsibility of training these people will fall on the shoulder of our leaders, right? Well, unfortunately, therein lies another issue, as it also turns out that approximately 80% of all companies, new and old, small and large, report a leadership development gap. To make matters worse, only about 40%, so less than 60% of all current leaders have had any formal type of mentorship training. So here we are with the majority of people with not the right skills to do the work that's available, and we fundamentally have very few people to teach them those skills. To make matters worse, we're now finding that approximately 57% of all employees who are leaving their jobs are citing leadership as the reason why. So, what we need now more than ever is a leadership style that helps people and helps businesses grow. And thankfully, that's exactly what transformational leadership has to offer. Now, when I talk about leadership, I always like to first talk about types that people are most familiar with. And in the business arena, there are quite a few. And perhaps you yourselves are familiar with a couple of these. So first, we have like laissez-faire. This is the complacent leader. These are the leaders that have the mindset of whatever you think is fine, you just figure it out. Very flexible with their staffs. On the flip side, though the flexibility can lead to a more creative mindset in employees, oftentimes it creates a situation where people are working in different directions because a single mission hasn't been clearly communicated. Oftentimes, this can take away, excuse me, from the productivity of an organization or a small business because not everyone is on the same page. So, not great if you're trying to be efficient. Next up, we have my absolute least favorite leadership style. This is the autocratic leader. These are the people that like to be the bosses, and boy, don't they like to let everybody know it, right? Oftentimes, it's going to feel like you have to walk on eggshells to be around them because when and if things don't go their way, they become reactionary and, in some cases, retaliatory. The challenge with this leadership style is because you're using fear as a primary motivator, you're automatically undercutting the qualities and capacities of your staffs because every time you scare people, you naturally prompt a stress response. That stress response will automatically eliminate a person's IQ by about 20 points. That's on average. So, because people are stressed, because they are fearful, they're automatically not going to be able to produce their best quality of work. So, in my opinion, this is probably the biggest waste of time and money when it comes to leadership styles. And finally, a really common one in small business is this one, transactional leadership, where the leader just name your price. What is it going to cost me to make you do what I need you to do? It's based on rewards. The unfortunate side of this as a small business is oftentimes you don't have the financing available to be able to pay people the extra amount to get them to do the jobs that are available. You do not have to run too many businesses on a small budget or have too many extra things that you're asking your staffs to do before you realize that simply the money will eventually run out. And when it runs out, people will inevitably leave. So, although there are benefits sometimes to each of these leadership styles, there are certain deficits, and they certainly do not take into account the growing need for developing skills in individuals. So, let's talk about my favorite style, shall we? Transformational leadership. Now, transformational leadership can be best described as supporting the individual to support the whole. It really is about meeting people where they are and helping to inspire them to be their best selves. You, as the leader, are not commanding, you are not forcing, you're not scaring, you're supporting. It's like a teacher, a mentor, someone that's helping others be their best selves. And I think that's really a valued component right now when we're talking about small business and figuring out ways to set ourselves apart from our competitors. If you can make a work environment more inclusive and more holistic to people's needs, then people will stay and not only stay, but want to be there, allowing you to better meet those current staffing challenges that you might be facing. So, transformational leadership as a whole, like I mentioned before, has four primary facets or components to it. First being inspirational motivation, and then idealized influence. We then have individualized consideration, and then intellectual stimulation. I call these the four I's. And I'm going to be really honest with you. They're kind of ideology heavy. There's a lot of content here. But thankfully for us, we're going to take a step back and we're going to make this a little bit more fun because I have to first teach you a little course that I like to call Lobstering 101. Who the hell put that handsome fella? Now, with over 50 years of lobstering experience, my dad actually started fishing when he was 7 years old out of a rowboat using wooden lobster traps. I fished with him for, like I said, 15 years. And through our experiences together, he unknowingly showed me exactly what a transformational leader looks like. Now, we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second. But let's talk about small business as a whole, because that's actually what lobstering is. It's a series of small businesses. So on the coast of Maine, there are currently about 5,600 commercial lobster fishermen. Each fisherman has their own license that is specific to a fishing zone and a fishing territory. Every single business every single license operates as its own small business. Now, on those businesses, you can have employees between 1 and 5 typically, so pretty small businesses. But that doesn't mean there's not a lot of money being made because on the coast of Maine, lobstering is actually really big business. Currently, approximately 100 million pounds of lobster are actually caught each year, contributing approximately $1 billion to the Maine economy. For Maine, that's a big deal for us. I have to be really honest, you do not have to be a very good fisherman to make $100,000 a year, which is really interesting because there are very few fiscally comparable opportunities in the area, as the majority of lobster fishermen only have a high school diploma. It is very common for 16, 17-year-old kids to have their own lobstering boats and to be able to make $60,000 or $70,000 in a single summer. Yes. So though $100,000 is not a lot of money to make for them, a lot of fishermen are making between $200,000 and $350,000 a year. Now, the reason I mention this is just to give a little perspective, because a lot of times people don't realize that fishing, though it is more of a heritage-based industry, there's still a lot of money to be made, and it is a really impactful industry where I'm from. And then the last thing you really should know about the Maine lobstering industry is we have a really long tradition of first conservation. There have been a lot of laws and things that we have done internally to make sure that this natural resource can be available for future generations. Another part of that, though, is we are highly competitive. Most fishermen all the time want to beat the guy next to them. If you've seen Deadliest Catch, I know super popular, you've seen the crab fishermen out in Alaska. You take that level of competition and multiply it by like 100, and that's how Maine's lobster fishermen are, just to give you a little perspective. So, what does all of this have to do with leadership? Well, let's look at it, shall we? So, as I said before, there are 4 primary facets to transformational leadership, right? Well, we're going to look at these piece by piece, and now hopefully, with my stories, I'll be able to show you what it all means. So, inspirational motivation. Now, inspirational motivation is about giving people something worth working for. Best summarized with the tagline, the key to navigation is knowing where you want to go. Really, this is about communicating to your staffs what exactly it is you're trying to achieve. Now, like I said, I started fishing when I was about 12 years old. And I have to tell you, it was mighty hard for a person, any person, to convince their 12-year-old to get up at 3:30 in the morning, to stand for 8 to 10 hours a day, elbows deep in dead fish in all different weather conditions. Like, think about the 12-year-olds in your life. Like, does that seem like an easy sell? Probably not. But thankfully, my dad had a really good way of communicating the importance of what we were doing. See, unlike the other fishermen in our harbor, he wasn't necessarily consumed or concerned with catching more than the guy next to him. The competition wasn't it for him. It was more so about being able to better provide for his family. So his mission was to catch more lobsters each year by fishing smarter. Now, we only have 800 traps that we fish. So that means we had to use a little bit of strategy, taking into account things like tide, water temperature, how each trap was performing. Every day we collected information so that we could better inform our decisions as to where to place those traps. The harder and smarter that we worked, the more we were able to catch and the better able we were able to provide for our family. Now, the same can be said about your staffs. If they can understand the measurable objective as to what they're trying to achieve, the better able they are going to be to meet those goals. It doesn't matter if you're running a team of 5, 10, 500 people. The better they are able to understand what it is they're trying to do, the more likely they are able to do it. So again, inspirational motivation is all about understanding what it is you're trying to achieve. And here are a few actionable items that you can begin using immediately to help your teams get there. So you can demonstrate this facet by first creating and communicating measurable missions. I know oftentimes people like to integrate really colorful language in their mission statements, and that's sometimes really great. But what exactly is it that you're trying to do? If you are able to put a numeric value on whatever it is you're trying to achieve, it's going to be better, whether it be pounds caught per year or number of contracts or number of hours worked, whatever it might be. See if you can put a number to it. in addition to that language that encompasses what you're trying to achieve. Next up, you want to make sure that you're conducting regular team meetings to share progress and to give updates. No one should be left in the dark. No one should set a goal at the beginning of the year and just be allowed to work towards it blindly. The more you're able to communicate the progress across the board, the better able the team will be able to calibrate to fill in the deficits that might be occurring. In addition, you might find that one of your teammates has really figured out a strategy to produce higher outcomes. In those situations, it's important to tap into that knowledge. And that's what that regular team meeting structure really does for people. So talk, communicate, let your staff know what's going well. Finally, you want to make sure that you're communicating how each role uniquely connects to the mission and frequently celebrate what aligns to those achievements. For my dad, and I understood because he explained it to me that by being on the boat with him, he was able to haul more traps. By hauling more traps, because my hands were there because I was contributing to the workload, he was able to catch more lobsters to better provide for a growing family. There was a direct cause and effect from me being there. So let your staffs know, what is the direct cause and effect? What is it about their role that's helping you perform at a higher level that helps you connect to this mission as a whole? And why is that important for them? It's not just about being important for you, it needs to be more holistic and more encompassing than that. So again, inspirational, ooh, no, motivation is all about communicating. Next up, we have idealized influence. There's dear old dad, looking a little bit older than perhaps that first picture there. But idealized influence is all about being a role model. I'll be really honest, from a very early age, I looked up to that man immensely. He was the toughest, hardest working fisherman on the whole coast of Maine. With a nickname like Slugger, I mean, how could he not be? Now, idealized influence is just that, all about being a really good role model. And as my dad would say, if you're going to talk the talk, you better walk the walk. Now, remember earlier I mentioned that his mission was to catch more lobsters each year by fishing smarter. Well, I was taught from a really young age that the smartest thing that you could do as a lobster fisherman is make the best out of the weather when the weather was there. The time of year which you catch lobsters typically lasts between about mid-July, to the end of November. This is when the great shed happens. So this is when the lobsters lose their hard exterior shells and they get softer shells. It's a growing process. And as it turns out, as with most things, when the lobsters shed and grow, they get really hungry. So they're more apt to get into the lobster traps. So if the weather's good, it's really important to make sure that you go out and fish the days when the lobsters are going to be available. I will be equally honest with you. I've seen a lot of rainy days on that boat. Seen a lot of windy days. I've seen a lot of foggy days. It was actually 28 consecutive foggy days one year. I've seen a lot of days where we were the only boat to go out for a week. And this was all because he was trying to show me that the smartest thing that we could do was fish. Even if other people weren't doing it, it didn't matter. We were doing it because that was how we were going to bring our vision, our mission to life. So, idealized influence, again, is about how you're embodying the mission that you're hoping to achieve with your staffs. And this is a thing that you need to live every single day. So, be sure the things that you're picking, the things that you want to be, you're not just communicating it, but you're being it consistently. Now, let's talk about how we can bring idealized influence into your workplace. So, first up, it's all about consistency. The unfortunate side about being a leader is all eyes are always going to be on you. It's a fishbowl. So be sure to consistently demonstrate whatever you value. Now, if that means being timely, make sure you're on time. If you're telling your staffs you don't want them to be distracted, then probably make sure you're not on social media or on your email during meetings. It's about showing the behaviors you're hoping for them to also demonstrate. Next up, you want to make sure that you're demonstrating transparency in your decision making. Communicate what's going on. Because we all come from different backgrounds and experiences, why you do things a certain way oftentimes can be confusing. Instead of allowing this to create workplace conflict, take a moment to explain your mindset or your decision making process so that other people are more likely to buy in and to further help you in realizing that mission of yours. Finally, as a leader, and this is something that I think all leaders in the beginnings of their career or in the beginnings of their businesses have to sometimes learn the hard way. But ultimately, we all make mistakes. And typically, if we're a small business owner, we're probably very accustomed to be high achieving and successful. But there are going to be challenging times. There are going to be times that we make missteps. And during those periods, it's going to be really important with your staffs to admit those problems or admit those challenges when you take those missteps. By showing your vulnerability, ultimately what you're doing is building trust with your teams, and that's only going to encourage them to be better behind you. They're going to be more supportive of the mission as a whole because they're going to trust that you're going to have their best interest in mind because you are acting ethically and honestly. So, again, all about being a role model when we talk about idealized influence. Next up, we have my favorite portion of transformational leadership, and this is individualized consideration. This can be best described as you really can't be what you don't know. And this speaks volumes to the current worker crisis that we're facing. Now, oftentimes when I speak to people, they say how, oh, I could be a lobster fisher and that'd be no problem. So let's take a quick look at what it takes to be a lobster fisherman. Now, anyone can technically get on a boat. There are kids, 12-year-olds that start lobstering, right? Well, the funny thing about this job and any job really is that you have to have a baseline piece of information or skill set in order to do the job. So, though you may be very capable of standing on a boat for 8 to 10 hours a day, if you were to step on the boat right now, I would challenge that you couldn't do the job because of the following reason. So, what I have here is I have one male lobster and I have one female lobster. Does anybody know which is which? Anybody?
Is the right male? I don't know. Is
Anybody else?
I think the right is female.
Yeah, okay. Actually, the right is a female. So the reason I bring this up is when it comes to lobstering, like I mentioned before, we have some really high standards about what types of lobsters we can keep. And that is largely dictated by gender. Now, we're able to keep female lobsters, but only if they haven't been breeders in the past. We won't get into that right now. But the first thing you're taught as a kid on a lobstering boat or as an adult is to be able to gender a lobster. And the easiest way to do that is to look at these things called swimmerettes. So the very top underneath the legs, you'll see these two little swimmerettes on both sides. Now, the males on the left, you'll notice they're kind of thick, they're kind of bulky, they look like muscles, right? Whereas on the right hand side, they're a little bit thinner, they're wispier. That's the female. Now, these are the sex organs for the lobster. And just by looking at them really quickly, you can tell so much about whether or not you can keep that lobster. Now, you guys, I'm sure that you're very, very successful in your fields and industries. But right now, if you were to step on a boat prior to having this knowledge, you wouldn't have been able to do a job that I know a lot of 12-year-olds can do. And that's the exact same mindset that you need to have every single time you have someone come onto your team. Every time. Just because they seem like they have the skills necessary to fulfill that role, remember that there are situations where maybe they don't know the way you do things or the way things need to be done within your organization. And as a transformational leader, what you're doing is helping to develop those skills. So, when we're talking about skill development, here's a really easy strategy to make sure that you can build your staffs so that they have the skills they need to be successful. Now, this is a three-part model. This strategy for skill development starts with modeling. Just like I showed you with the lobster, the male and the female, whenever you're trying to help develop a skill in a staff member, you're always going to first model the behavior. After that, you're going to have them practice, just like I had you practice. in real life on a boat, I probably have you touch a couple of thousand lobsters before I moved on, but you're going to let them practice the behavior. Once they've practiced in front of you right then, you're always going to make sure that you provide feedback. And depending on their performance during the practice phase, you're either A, going to say, hey, great job, awesome, go do your thing, you've got it now. Or B, you're going to give them some necessary feedback as to how they can improve that skill set. And from there, the modeling process begins again. And you continue this cycle until they have demonstrated through the practice phase that they understand it. Now, continuing the positive feedback is really going to be valuable because the more confidence you can build in your staff members, the more confident they're going to be able to be when they try and do this on their own. And really, independence is what you want. You want a staff that is able to function without you in the workplace. So again, when it comes to individualized consideration, it's about understanding that you can't be what you don't know. It doesn't matter what job or role you're trying to take on, you can't do it unless you know what it is that you're trying to do. And by modeling, practicing, and giving feedback, you can help your staffs become what you need them to be. All right, so a couple of other ways that you can help skill development in your organization is first, make sure that you're developing positive relationships so that your staffs are willing to grow with you. If they're not feeling comfortable, if they're not feeling like you have their back, they're not going to be willing to open up, to be vulnerable, to admit they don't know something. So allow them the opportunity to be vulnerable with you to learn by being positive, creating those positive relationships. Next up, you want to make sure that you're constantly facilitating one-to-one mentorship meetings to provide that personalized feedback. Set goals with your staffs. Each staff member, whether you're working with 2, 5, 100 people, it doesn't matter. Within your organization, you should all be setting goals and be talking about those goals frequently. Finally, you want to make sure that you're meeting each mistake with compassion, and instead of getting upset, really please remember that it's best to assume positive intent. And the only way to remedy a negative situation is through learning. So take the opportunity to reteach skills as is necessary. So our final facet of transformational leadership is intellectual stimulation. And that's the very back of that little lobstering boat. Going out of the harbor first thing in the morning. And the cool thing about being on that boat each day is exactly what intellectual stimulation is. And that's every time the sun comes up, it's a chance to learn something new. Now, I started at 12 learning how to gender lobsters, but pretty quickly, Dad realized that wasn't necessarily enough for me. So then I learned how to band lobsters and how to build traps. I know how to change hydraulic lines and how to clean the bottom of the boat. You name it, I can probably do it on that boat. And the more I was able to do, the less stress and pressure there was on him. The same will be true about your staffs. The more you're able to support the skill development of each individual, the more you'll be able to have other people take on other responsibilities, improving the overall efficiency of your organization. So, in your organization, what are a couple of ways you can do that? Well, first, you want to make sure that you clearly define the responsibilities of each role. Let everyone know what it is they're supposed to be doing. Oftentimes, you'll find that, especially in smaller organizations, people are kind of just putting out fires as they come up. And though that can be useful in putting out fires, big picture, it doesn't really help the growth of an organization. So, the more quickly you are to identify the individual responsibilities for each role, the better able people will be able to fulfill the responsibilities of that role. Next, make sure that you encourage and incentivize when you're able to professional development, whether it just be like positive reinforcement. That can be a huge thing for an incentive, but let people know that like it's good to grow. We want you to be able to take on more responsibilities. And if you are able, make sure that's reflected in their pay or their benefits if possible. Finally, if you're going to give or encourage people the opportunities to move upward in your organization or to take on more responsibilities, make sure that you're providing those resources for learning and professional development. Now, these can be things that are created internally, or they can be outside resources, depending on your industry. There are a lot of really wonderful resources available these days. So don't feel like you have to completely create things from scratch, because that may not necessarily be true. But when you're thinking about your organization, if you are the owner and you are the leader within it, what is it that you need support in to make sure that your business runs better? And those should be the areas in which you're investing time and energy to develop that professional development. All right. So there we have the four facets of um, transformational leadership. And I do believe that I actually showed you a few more than four tangible skills. So let's talk about what transformational leadership will do once you start using it. So here we have a picture of a typical organization where typically there's going to be a number of roles within the organization that currently are not filled. So the cool thing about transformational leadership is once you start using it, probably not only will those jobs be filled, but other individuals within your organization will start to naturally pick up the same ideas and principles of transformational leadership, because it will fundamentally change your culture. As other people begin to adopt these strategies, what you'll notice is that you'll be able to grow, because as everyone is working towards a common vision or mission, the machine as a whole is more efficient. And with that, you're able to expand, moving lower level employees into higher level roles and bringing on new people to help the business grow. So, circling back around, I think at this point we can all agree I've shown you the urgency, I've described the four facets, I've provided four practical strategies, and you know at least the first step in preparing a lobster for market. So, because I've done my job, I now have a call to action for all of you. And that's to make sure moving forward that you really do invest in transformational leadership training and mentors to support your business growth. Long term, as a business leader, I think that we all know that it can be incredibly lonely. And just because you are alone as the top of that business doesn't mean you have to be alone as a whole. The more support that you have as a leader, the better you're going to be as a leader and the better your business will be. So at this point, if you have any questions for me,